Hello, everybody. Welcome to Know Your Brain. My name is Faith. This is a podcast about mental health and psychology. And today I'm very happy to welcome author Brenda May Whiteman. She's a registered social worker and the author of this book, Unmet Needs Never Go Away, a new paradigm for raising our children in the 21st century. We're going to talk about this today, but also I'd like to say if you're new, subscribe. Okay. So, Brenda, can you tell me why you wrote this book, Unmet Needs Never Go Away?
Yes, absolutely. That book has been writing itself in my head for more than 30 years. I knew very early on when my own daughter was quite young, and I was working in a public school board, working as a behavior therapist with students and their families around behavioral issues. I knew then that there was something that seemed to be missing in a lot of people's relationships between parents and children and families. And it was constantly at the forefront of my mind. And there was a day, and this would have been the late 90s, when I had a thought. Well, I had two thoughts actually at that time. One, the first thought was, I wonder why so many people seem to be completely unaware of the inner life, the inner emotional and psychological life of their children. And then my second thought was, gosh, maybe I should write a book about this. And that's exactly when it germinated inside of me. And I started thinking about it, taking notes, writing things down, and gradually putting my thoughts together for a book. It took almost this long for all kinds of reasons, busyness and work and child rearing myself. You know, I would write a chapter and then I would shelve it for a period of time, and then I would get back to it, or another idea would drop into my head and inspire me to do a particular chapter. And so gradually I realized that, you know, the book was coming together and I wanted and needed to get it published, that it was a drive within me.
So I want to go back to something that stood out of what you said. You said parents seem unaware of the inner lives of their children. I often talk to parents in my job, and one question that I often ask them is, you know, they'll say stuff about the reading and the math and stuff, and then I'll say, oh, what is your child interested in? And they always look like they have to think about it, and they're so surprised by the question, and they're happy to answer it, but they always look like no one has ever asked them that, or they didn't think about it, or they at first they go, oh, I don't know, I never thought about it. And like, I find that fascinating. Like, they don't know what their child, who is maybe 12 years old, is interested in unless they reflect on it. They can tell you all kinds of other stuff, like whether they clean their room or not, or if they've been to the doctor, or how tall they are, but what are they interested in? They always have to pause and really reflect on it before they answer.
I'm not surprised to hear you say that. And I think there are a couple of things that work in many, many families and parents. And this is it, that, and they're not consciously thinking this necessarily, or thinking it in any kind of a negative, controlling way in terms of being a parent. But there's often a kind of arm's length approach to parenting, which looks upon their children as a project. And again, I don't mean that to condescend to any parent whatsoever, but rather they just see it as, okay, here's what I need to do to be a good parent. Here are the things that, you know, I've got to get them to school. I've got to feed them. I've got to put them in hockey or put them in dance, or, you know, those kinds of things. And it becomes, what do I need to do for this child versus having an actual relationship with the child.
How can I come to know them? How can I strengthen the relationship? How can I support them in their aspirations? Things like that. I'm going to go back for 1 second. We're going to talk a lot about that. We've got up to an hour. I just want you to talk a little bit about your background and your education. So where did you start as a young woman?
Sure. So interesting, as a young woman, after high school, I did not go to university right away due to, you know, my own life factors, my family of origin, things like that. I ended up in the workplace doing sales and management and account representative and things like that, that were totally uninteresting to me, but they were a career for about 10 years. However, during all that time, and I can actually say from the time I was very young, I always had this conversation going on in my head about these matters, about human beings, about psychology, about behavior, about personality development. I was always fascinated by personality development. And so I ended up in a career that, supported me, but was not where I needed to be. But in order to do what I really felt I needed to do, of course, I had to go back to school, which I did do at the age of 29, went to the University of Toronto, thought that I wanted to be a psychologist because of this interest that I had. And at the time, and as I think is true for most lay people, that's such a generic term, right? It's kind of anybody who's interested or doing anything in the realm of psychology is what a psychologist is. That's what most lay people think. Well, I got into university, got doing some courses, and quickly discovered that, academic psychology was not exactly my path, and that I was interested more in consciousness, in the development of consciousness, how consciousness affected parenting and child rearing, and how all of that affected personality development in children growing up. So I quickly switched. So academic psychology, at least at U of T at that time, was too behavioral for my liking. I switched into more philosophy, theology and religious studies courses. And then also at the time, there was a program which I don't think is there any longer at U of T called The History of Psychoanalysis in Literature. And it combined psychoanalysis, studying Jung and others, and psychology and etc. So I did a double major in that program and philosophy and religious studies. So that was really my I felt like I had come home when I was there.
Big questions, the big questions. Yeah. The big questions. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then when I finished university, and it just happened that I was moving from Toronto to Peterborough at that time, I got married. Around that time, I had my daughter. So graduate school was not, in my opinion, was not on for those early years when my daughter was growing up. My priority was there. So I was raising her and focusing my life and all of these ideas and beliefs and knowledge that I was gaining over time onto raising her. And then when she was around 4, I went back to work and started working for the public school board in Peterborough as a behavior therapist. And I did that for about 7 years. Then I left there and worked for a children's mental health agency, Kinark, for about 7 years. I ran the parenting education programs there. I ran the supervised access program at that time. And then, so I did that for about 7 years. I seem to have had 7-year jobs over my career. Then I went to work as a therapist for primary healthcare services. And I was there doing individual counseling and therapy with patients who were referred by the doctors. And I was there for about 7 years. For about the previous 10 or 15 years, I had wanted to go into private practice and thought I'd like to do that, as my kind of last. So I did that in the start of 2013. And I've been in private practice as a psychotherapist ever since then.
So you've done everything. You worked in the public, not everything, but a lot. You worked in the public school board. You work for a mental health agency for children. You're in private practice. So you've worked with a wide range of ages and a wide range of presenting problems.
Yes.
But it seems like parenting would you say that's your main interest?
Parenting is my main interest. Yes. It's a huge interest. And to me, it's the most important sort of mission in my life, is to try to change how we do raise children so that they can grow up emotionally and psychologically and mentally healthy, happy, content, and stable.
Yeah.
That's my interest. And so I do have a lot of clients in my practice where I'm not focusing on trying to teach them as parents necessarily, but rather focusing on helping them undo the damage in their own lives
Yeah.
that happened to them as a result of
So
the
it's about
parenting.
parenting. It's about parenting in the sense that you're teaching them to reparent themselves,
Exactly.
right? So you're reparenting
Yes.
that child. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
One of
Yes.
my other people that I interviewed, Dr. Ross, he said something very similar, and I think most psychologists and mental health professionals would agree. He said, at the end of his book, he talked about what can we do so we don't get to this state? What can we do so that I'm not just treating adults in a mental hospital who are trying to kill themselves? And he talked about the school system and he talked about parenting. And yeah, those first, I'm going to say 7 years are so crucial. And that's where a lot of the root of people's problems, even 50 years later or 80 years later, that's where it is, right? So can you
That's
just tell me
right.
about your title? Your book has two titles. Can you
Yes.
tell me about the first part? What does this mean? Unmet needs never go away.
So at some point, I had a different working title for most of the years that I was writing the book. And my original title was going to be No Longer Unprotected. And what I meant by that was that these children were in family environments where their future mental health and well-being was not being protected. However, I had a couple of people say along the way, it might sound like sexual health, or it might not be obvious what that means. And then I did always have the subtitle in my mind that we have to change the way we raise human beings if they're going to be mentally healthy. We have to change what we're doing. So that's why the second. So Unmet Needs Never Go Away was another aha moment a few years before the book was actually published, where I was working with, I've worked now with hundreds or maybe thousands of clients, I guess, over the years. And in my private practice, I remember having a moment working with someone who was trying to heal from childhood emotional neglect. And this person was in their 50s, I would say. And I had that thought, oh my gosh, these unmet needs never go away. They haunt people forever. And it was not long after that I went, that's what the book needs to be titled, because it's so true.
Can you give an example from a person? Obviously, we're not going to name anyone, but an unmet need they had when they were younger that was emerging later on. Can you give an example?
In general, I can think of many clients who would fit this description of where they are vulnerable in their adult lives, adult relationships, to seeking approval, to seeking praise, to seeking acceptance, right? That's just endless for them. And because of that, they often make bad choices and decisions in their lives, or they make naive choices and decisions. And it's because those needs for affirmation, for admiration, for support, for encouragement, all of those things were never given to them, were never met. It's my observation that to a large extent, many children grow up only with criticism, only with do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. You did that wrong. You got 80%. Why didn't you get 90%? Clean your room. And in between those admonitions from parents, they never get, you're doing a fabulous job. I'm so proud of you for this. I love spending time with you. You're good at this. Whatever it might be, there's not enough of that. None of us gets enough of that. And so we grow up suffering as a result. And so that gets built into the personality as
And I
it's
guess
developed.
if you're looking for that affirmation as an adult because of some unmet need, what could happen is, let's give the example of a woman. She's always looking to her husband to do it, or boyfriend after boyfriend after boyfriend. And that's not a healthy relationship, right? It's
Right.
not based on a mutual desire for flourishing and support. It's based on need, right? And getting
Absolutely.
something from the person. It's kind of an immature relationship. Like you're looking for something that you should be like, it's fine for a child to look for that. That's
Right.
normal. But as an
Right.
adult, to look for that from your spouse, it's gonna harm the relationship, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a, a sign that that relationship is likely going to falter at some point. Because if that person is going into a relationship, as you say, looking to get their needs met, say, through their husband, that's an impossible task because the person in question has that emptiness, right? Has that void. So that need can never be met. In fact, one of the things when I am doing parenting education in one form or another, I always try to emphasize meet the need where it's at. When that need is showing itself at 2 years old, mommy, 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 right? Or at 4 or at 7 years old. Meet the need. What happens, and I think this is because we really don't have a lot of knowledge and wisdom in our society about what does raise a healthy personality. What a lot of people think is, well, I need them to grow up to be independent of mind.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to coerce them into it or train them out of that dependency when they're 4.
Hmm.
And I guess that seems to make sense kind of on the surface. But actually, if you don't meet the need when it presents itself developmentally,
Yeah.
the personality gets stuck
Yeah. And
because
so
they're
I guess
waiting
there's a
for it.
process where initially you meet the need, but then later on, they're able to meet it themselves.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Instead of
Exactly.
being stuck in that looking for it externally. But initially it has to be met externally.
Yes,
So they know what that feels like and how it's done. And then they take over what mommy was doing.
that's right.
Like,
Because they can't do it for themselves then, right?
and they have to see it modeled at least, right? Like, what do I do here, right? And
Yes,
then this is how you talk to yourself, but your mom has to show you first, or your dad, or
that's
your
right.
grandma, somebody. Yeah.
That's right, Faith. And you have to see it modeled. And then the other message that the child gets from that when mommy does that for them is their own sense of value, right? I'm worthy of being paid attention to. I'm worthy of having these things told to me and shared with me. I'm worthy of being guided into this. I'm not being dragged into a developmental level that I'm not at yet. And mommy or daddy or whomever is not listening, right? Instead, they feel affirmed, and that allows them to integrate those things and move forward, move into the next stage of development, and then the next stage of development.
So then, your book has 12 chapters. So I want to ask you about chapter 4. Chapter 4
Okay.
is called The Language of Behavior. So behavior to
Yes.
me, what that means is externalizing behavior. So aggression, swearing, hitting. Is that what you mean by behavior? And can you tell us what's the language of behavior?
Yes. So the language of behaviors, I do think that a lot of behavior, often negative behaviors that children exhibit and demonstrate, for parents in their young lives, is an attempt to communicate something to the parent that the parent is missing. The parent often views it as the child's behaving badly, doing something wrong, not
Being
listening to me,
spiteful.
being spiteful, yes,
I don't like
doing
that word.
something I don't want them to do, right? And
Hmm.
in fact, what it is, again, because the child is immature in its brain development, its personality development, its emotional development, it can't articulate what's missing. It
Hmm.
can't. All it can do is object. What? Screaming, temper tantrums, refusals, throwing toys, hitting mommy, right? This is all they've got. It's all they've got to communicate that something's wrong, something's missing. I need you as my parent to understand what I need, and you're not getting it. So I'm going to throw myself on the floor and have a tantrum.
Yeah.
It's always about trying to communicate something. It always
Mhm.
is to the parent. And
I
and we misunderstand it.
I know a behaviorist would say it's always four things. It's either sensory. So they're hungry, they're tired, they need a nap. They're thirsty, their tooth hurts. So sensory, I don't know if you would agree with this, if this tells the whole story, or it's attention. They want attention, which is natural. They're trying to avoid something, or they want access to something. They always say
They
it's one of
want
those
what?
four.
What was the last word?
Access. They want
Access.
access to something. So
Right.
a cookie or iPad or something. I don't know if this is the model you want to use, but this is what the behaviorists would say. They'd say there's
Right.
four things that cause externalizing behavior: sensory, which is a physical issue. They want access to something, they want to avoid something, or they want attention.
So yes, and these things can be true. And at various times in different situations, it might be one or the other or a couple of those things.
Sure.
But I think it's a little risky to only understand children's behavior from those behavioral points of view. That what we need to see is that there's a thread to all of these behaviors, to the child's psyche, or the word I use in the book a lot is spirit. And I don't necessarily mean that in a religious way or even a spiritual way, but rather sort of the totality of what's going on in the psyche and emotions and personality of the child. And so that spirit is trying to communicate
Yeah.
something. And
Yeah.
that has to be heard.
Maybe it's always a cry for help. Maybe it's always that,
I like that. I like that.
you
Because it
know,
is a cry for help. It
right?
is. One of the things I say is that behavior is always trying to make the invisible visible, or the unconscious conscious, the unseen seen. Like, yes, it's the child's attempt at crying for help to bring these things to light that
Yeah.
they can't articulate in any other manner.
And then you're like a detective as a parent. Like, what is it that they need help with? Is it some aspect of their thinking? Is it just a hug they need? Is it, to increase their ability to self-soothe? Do they just need a nap? Like, do they need to be aware of when they need to take a nap or drink a glass of water? One mom told me that her son would be very difficult. He was about 11, and she realized it was always when he was thirsty. But they had to figure that out together, right?
Right,
Um,
right.
and so I guess you're on a exploration together. Like, what is this, right? Like, what is this? What's the problem here? What do we need to do and learn together?
Yes. And I would add to that that sometimes it's not just about the child. The parent has to look at what they might be missing in their interaction with the child, in their understanding of what that need is, or in how they're dealing with the child, or how they're maybe distracted and not dealing with the child, and the child is trying to point that out. Like, Mommy, where did you go? You might be here physically, but you're not present to me.
Yeah.
And the child is trying to, in a way, teach that to the parent, trying to say, wait a minute, I need you to be present with me. And you're not present. So now I'm going to just act out. And the parent, if they're only looking at it as what's missing, what does the child need? Yes. Is
Yeah.
it water? Is it food? Is it attention? If they're not seeing that, it also includes them.
Mm.
So much of what goes on with our children includes us because
Yeah.
we're always in relationship with them and they are in relationship with us. And
Mm.
so things can be missed by
And one
parents.
one thing the behavioral model leaves out is there's nothing of like, how is he feeling? Right? Like so much of this just comes out of fear, right? Like, oh, you're afraid, or oh, he's afraid. He's doing something very violent maybe, but often that's coming out of fear.
Yes.
If you really look at it, that happened right after, you turned out the lights because he's afraid of the dark, but he
Yes.
can't articulate that. Or
Right.
when he found out that maybe someone he didn't like was coming to visit, right? So you have to look at what precipitated it and look at the emotions, not just maybe
Absolutely.
being a strict behaviorist, because we all need to learn to identify our emotions as part of mental health.
Right. Right.
So
Absolutely.
one of your chapters is called The Seduction of Culture. Can you talk about that?
Yes. Here we are in 2026, and let's say in the last 50 years, A lot has changed
Oh my
in,
goodness.
right?
20 years.
Yeah, 20 years, right. But certainly the culture of what we accept as normal now is so very different. And for instance, it is pretty much accepted in our culture as normal that most families have to have two working parents, and that daycare is a perfectly acceptable solution and it should not be questioned. Should not
Okay.
be questioned. Um, I
Let's
question
question
that.
it. Let's question it, Brenda.
Great,
Let's
great. Let's
question it.
question it. Let's question it. Here's the thing, and I like to make sure I state this because obviously the people who are the daycare workers who are there caring for children are absolutely there because they want to be, they love children, they do their job well. I'm not taking issue with anybody or any particular daycare whatsoever. Most people can put their children into those daycares and know that the children will be safe and cared for. The problem is those people in the daycare are not the parents.
No, and also the ratio is very big.
It
Like,
is.
if you're at home, a mother might be home with 2 children. I mean, before birth control many years ago, she might have been home with 8 children, but now she's typically home with 2 children. A daycare worker, I don't know what, it depends on their age, the ratio, but let's say it's 1 to 5. They're watching
Right,
5 children, and there might
right.
be 15 children in the room, like more than one worker, right? There's a lot of children all in the same room
Yes, absolutely.
who are very young, and there's,
Mhm.
yeah, the ratio is very different.
Yes. And you said something that I think is important. You said there might be one person watching several children. Watching. This is unfortunately what happens a lot because what else can they do? They have so many children, is they're watching them, make sure they don't get hurt, make sure they're having their snack, make sure they have a toy, whatever.
Change their
But they're
diapers, yeah.
right. But there isn't that reciprocity of attention and affection and interaction because there's no time. And that's not really what daycare is intended to do. So those children, and the younger they are, the worse this is for them. Those children are kind of at sea emotionally and psychologically in terms of being grounded and connected to their adults. They're kind of at sea a lot of the time that they are there.
And some of them are there for very long hours. I
Yes.
worked I worked at a daycare. And
Okay.
so a daycare might open at 6, they might close at 6. Now some of the children aren't there that whole time, but some of them are. They're there for
Absolutely.
12 hours.
Yes.
That's
That's honestly, I think that's insane. It's too long for young children to be away from their parents, to be sort of outside of that relationship, which is what develops personality. You know, neurologically, emotionally, psychologically, it happens through that mirroring and through that reciprocity of connection. That's the only way it happens. And when they are outside of that, they're kind of in a moratorium of development and lacking in connection to the people who they are actually connected to, which is their parents. So I think a lot of unrest starts to get bred in the bone in those children.
So what would you recommend to a young person who was planning a family, how they sort of saw the first 4 or 5 years and what would be the ideal thing to do? We can't always do the ideal. There are
Right.
many circumstances. People have different family arrangements. Some people have grandparents who will help. Some people have more money. Some people have less. But what would ideally you recommend to somebody?
Yes. And I do recommend this to several of my clients that I've had in the last few years who are starting families, who are, young women starting families. And I do recommend this. The first 4 years, if you can be home constructively with your child or children, is best. You
Mm-hmm.
need to have that, again, that neurological mirroring and connection just with you and with dad and maybe with grandma secondarily, But with you, mostly, and as we know, certainly in those first 3 years, absolutely those first 3 years.
Yeah.
I would say if you can be home for 4 years, if you can adjust your financial life and your career life so that you can do that, that's ideal. And in addition to that, I would say when they go to kindergarten at age 4, not full days, 5 days a week. Too
Yeah.
much, too much,
Yeah.
too young, too much.
I'll just say in Ontario, we have full day kindergarten now. It used to be about 15 years ago half days, but they changed
Right,
it to full days for better or worse. I will also say you are not required to send your child to junior kindergarten legally. You are
right.
required to send them to senior. Are you required? I can't remember if you're required to send them to senior kindergarten. Ask the principal. I don't think you're legally required to send your child to kindergarten. You are required to send them to grade 1
Right, I agree. I
legally.
think that's right.
Well, that's the law, I think, is that you don't have to send them to kindergarten, but that is, now that I recall, you don't have to legally send them to kindergarten. And I do know some parents who, when their child was maybe having some sort of developmental issues with language or something, they kept them home for JK. Um, so I have seen cases where the kids stayed home for JK to get an extra year of that close sort of mentoring. And they typically will come in SK, but there are some students who don't start till grade 1.
Yes.
So that is an option, if your family can financially afford that.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've heard psychologists say if you get the first 3 or 4 years right, you have a good foundation. If
Absolutely.
there's a fracture or a lack during that time, it is incredibly difficult to correct it.
Yes, that's right. And that's in those first 3 to 4 years is where personality disorders get formed. And once that happens, as we know, personality disorders are extremely difficult to heal from, for therapists to work with, to help people to do
Yeah,
better through that, right? It's
yeah.
very, very difficult. So, yes, those first 3 to 4 years, I mean, it's so important as to, I think it's appropriate to kind of scare young parents and say, this is so much more serious than you can possibly imagine. You've got to think long and hard about what you're doing in terms of giving your child to someone else for 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day. And the younger you do that, the more damage that it's going to ensue in all
Mhm.
probability.
Okay. So, um, you have a chapter in your book called Divine Advocacy, which is a fascinating title. Can you tell me about that chapter, Divine Advocacy, what that's about?
I believe that a couple of things. I mean, I am a Christian and I do come to this particular chapter with a couple of scriptures from the Bible where Jesus talks about, let the little children come unto me. Um, I extrapolate from that in this way that children will guide us in terms of their needs and their connection to us and their unconditional love for us. We often talk about parents loving their children unconditionally, and most parents do, right? But the truth of the matter is, children come into the world. I believe humans come into the world totally, every cell of their body is about love. They just love us. They just love, period. And they need that to be reciprocated. They need that to be received
So much
and
more
to be,
so they are modeling I don't know that most parents unconditionally love their children. I think that's overly generous. But you're right. Children and babies, they do unconditionally love their parents. Yeah.
yes, they do. Yes, absolutely. And that's why I think that the scriptures that I chose, I think express that this child is coming to you out of complete love. Yes, let's just see if we can quickly find it.
Yeah.
61.
At the beginning of the chapter, you have, let the children come unto me and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these.
Right, right. Absolutely. And I think what that means is, in a broad sense, when a child demonstrates a need, that need is divine. in this way, that they came into the world as a human being with needs that need to be met. And you, as the parent, you're it. You're the one. And so, as he says, let them come unto me. Like, let them come to you and express that need, and you meet it for them. You are doing my work when you meet that need.
So something holy and very precious about having that relationship with the child,
Yes,
because you can learn from them what is the kingdom of heaven, what is the highest thing. Because
exactly.
yeah, they have such a purity about them that
Yes, they do.
we lose as we get older, right? Well, it's still there, but we have to rediscover it. And maybe
Yes,
through our children, we can rediscover it.
yes, yes. And often, and I use this term not literally, but it's that purity is kind of beaten out of us. Usually, I think kind of by the time children are about 5 years old, many have lost that sense of total love, unconditional love, divine self-worth that's just natural.
And a sense of wonder about the beauty of the world, right? And
Absolutely.
the miracle of every little thing. Like a little child will be so filled with awe over something small, like a flower or a sound or something, right? It's like
Yes.
they can see the world anew, right? Like
Yes.
as it truly is. But then we get sort of uh different as we get older.
Yeah. We get cynical, or we get, oh well, that's just a child's approach, you know? But it isn't just a child's approach. It is who we are and who we were created to be.
Yeah. I'm going to read the other Bible quote that you put here.
Yes.
I'm a little bit inspired by the picture behind you, the little girl praying. Um,
Thank you.
you've got
Thank
that
you.
there, which is probably very telling what people pick for their art. It says from Matthew 18, I tell you the truth, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in heaven. And whoever welcomes a little child like this welcomes me. So something important about being able to come into relationship with children and to be humble and to be new in a way that they are new and to be willing to welcome them and listen to them and to value them.
Yes, I agree. And I think when we humble ourselves, that suggests that we are getting down to their level, literally and more metaphorically speaking, and understanding how they see things and how they see the world and how their emotions are. And it's only then that we can know what to do and what to say and how to be, you know.
Mhm.
And it's, the next one was just be imitators of God, therefore, as little children. They
Yeah.
are imitating, they are showing us in their innocence what God is, and therefore what we all are.
And their enthusiasm. You never see anything as enthusiastic as a 3-year-old. They have this
Yes,
passion for life and for novelty and for learning
yes,
that is
yes,
just amazing.
right.
And a kind of
Absolutely.
honesty. And they have a kind of honesty too that goes away as we develop our persona, right?
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So they're imitating
yes.
God, I think, in their honesty and their enthusiasm and their wonder in
Hmm.
those things.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, they're
yeah.
pure joy, huh? They're pure joy. Yes, absolutely.
So another part in the book is called Your Child's Inner Life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So that's what I was referring to when I was, first thinking about writing this book so many years ago. This idea that it did seem to me that many, many adults are arm's length from their children in terms of their psyche and their emotions and what's going on the inside. And rather, they're sort of treating them, like I said, like a project where you need to do this, you need to do that, you can't do this, you can't do that.
And
Rather
almost, I would
than,
say, almost like an object. No, I don't,
yes, I know.
maybe a beloved object. Like, I don't want to sound cruel, but like almost like an object, like it's not a complete entity with its own thoughts and feelings and desires and goals.
Right. I agree completely. And I'm glad you said that, because the other example or metaphor I will sometimes use, and I feel concerned about using it also, like object, is sometimes they try to train children like an animal.
Mhm.
We can't, children are not dogs. We can't just
Yeah.
train them through repetitive behaviors,
Yeah. They have their own spirit, right? They have their own self, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you need to take that into account, right? Like, you
That's
know,
right.
maybe
That's right.
you want to train your child to go be a doctor. My son's going to be a doctor. My son's going to be a pilot. Maybe those are nice goals. Those are good professions. But maybe he's destined to be an artist or
That's
a
right.
dentist or an accountant, something else, right?
Yes.
So one of
Yes.
the ladies I work with, she has one daughter who is an engineer, one daughter who's a doctor, and one daughter who is a lawyer. And I said, "How did you accomplish this? This is amazing." And she said, "I just paid attention to what they were interested in." So my daughter, like, who became an engineer, she didn't like toys, but then she was all about Lego. So I bought her Lego. So she just really looked at them as, she was bringing out what was already inside of them, not that she was
Right.
instilling something. And they've gone
Right.
on to be these amazing, successful women with these,
Yes.
I was quite surprised when she said one daughter is a doctor and one daughter is a lawyer and one daughter is an engineer. And I was like, how does someone accomplish that? But she said, I just paid attention to them, like to their
Yes.
interests. I paid attention to their
To their
interests.
interests. Yes. Which you talked about that
Yeah.
earlier. And the other thing is, clearly what she did also was she didn't get in the way of them. When they expressed these various interests, she didn't get in their way and say, well, no, 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 I don't think so. You should play with this toy, or you should do that, or, don't be a firefighter, be a doctor. No, she didn't get in the way,
Yeah.
right? She nurtured them and allowed them to manifest who they were, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you have a chapter also called The Importance of Fathers, which is so important to talk about. And I don't know if it's talked about enough. Maybe it is. But tell me about the importance of fathers.
Yes. You know, Again, we're talking about what's changed in the last 50 years, and there's been so much divorce, which also is now just accepted as being okay. And I can honestly say I'm divorced, but I don't accept it as being okay, particularly when there are young children involved. But that's a whole other conversation, I'm sure. But the lack of connections and relationships and time spent between children and fathers is generally not enough in many, many cases, but particularly when families are split and fathers are part-time or absent entirely. And this is a major hit to the personality development of a child, male or female. We have different needs as males and females with our respective parents, but it's equally disastrous to children, both males and females, when a father is either absent or mostly absent
Yeah.
or disconnected.
I wonder if fathers don't, or men don't feel valued as fathers. Like, I wonder if that's why or they just don't feel welcomed. Like, I don't know, like it's so important to have a father. It's such a blessing to have a father who, for a girl, like, as I think about my own father, or for a boy, it's such a blessing to have a father who cares for you and who's present. And I wonder if like, maybe the fathers don't feel welcome or they don't know, like, how important they are, and what a great thing it is to be a father, like maybe the greatest thing you could ever do with your life.
Yes,
Um,
yes. I think
maybe they
that's
feel
right.
unappreciated. I'm um,
I think
not sure.
that's become more and more and more true in these last few decades because men in general, males in general, and certainly fathers have been more condescended to and criticized and put down for what the male sex represents.
Mm,
And also, as you know, as the women's movement and feminism, let's say since the 60s, has increased over time, along with empowering women and valuing women, has unfortunately come devaluing men.
Yeah.
And so what you've said about, a lot of men feel unappreciated or undervalued, no kidding. They do. They do.
Yeah.
And as a society, I think we don't really value the male personality, the male psyche, and the male's purpose in life, and particularly, yes, in sometimes relationships and in the parenting of children.
Yeah. Like what he brings to the family. Like, I mean, I could talk about mothers too, of course, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
But like what he brings to the family is so irreplaceable, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I
Irreplaceable.
will just encourage people to read your book. That is chapter 10, if they'd like to learn a little bit more about the importance of fathers.
Thank
And then
you.
at the end of your book, the last chapter is called Such Great Reward. Talk about the reward.
Yes. Having a relationship, a grounded, healthy relationship with a child or children is probably the most rewarding relationship we'll ever have in our lives. Romantic relationships are rewarding in different ways,
For a
obviously.
while.
Sometimes.
For a while they are
Yeah, on and off.
up and
But
down.
yes, up and down, that's right. But the relationship with the child, when you connect to them, when you connect electrically with their inner life, when you're paying attention to who they are and what they like and what they don't like and what their feelings are, and helping them grow through those stages of development, not only is it rewarding to you because you're seeing that, you're participating in it and you're witnessing it, but it's rewarding because you will raise an emotionally, psychologically, mentally stable human being by doing that. And there's no greater reward than that. And particularly today, with so much mental illness and mental health issues and violence and personality disorders and all of these things that are just huge in our world, those people, whatever their challenges are, were little children once. And something happened. Something happened.
Many
And
things
they
happen.
became this way, right? Yes. So as a parent, the reason it's such great reward is when you can avoid that, when you can raise sane, healthy, happy human beings, there's no greater reward. There's nothing that brings me more pleasure than knowing that my daughter is doing well, that my daughter did not have mental health issues and addictions and problems. And you know what I mean? There's no greater reward in my life than that. Mm-hmm. And we're contributing to the well-being of society when we raise healthy children, and we are taking away from the well-being of society when we're not, because those children become adults and wreak havoc in the world.
I heard someone say, what your child offers you is the best relationship of your life, potentially, but you have to keep the relationship pristine.
Yes.
Right? So
I like that.
you have to keep the relationship pristine. Like, so you have to think about it before you have the kid. Like you were saying, you have to plan out, how are we going to do the first 4 years? And then as you go, you have to be conscious of like, how am I nurturing this relationship and not ruining it, right? So
not ruining it, right? Yeah, not being self-centered and self-focused in the relationship, in the interactions.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you have to be perfect. I mean, that's not what this is about, because forgiveness is a part of all relationships, but and mistakes are a part of all relationships, but as much as you can to keep the relationship as good as you can.
Yes. May I just make reference before we go to one other chapter that I think is so important, the one called Who Are You?
Okay.
And that chapter is all about everything we've been talking about here, in that if you don't really know who you are, if you're not relative, as you said, nobody's perfect, but relatively mature, grounded, stable, sane, happy, content. If you're not those things in your own life, I would go so far as to say you almost cannot raise children who will not have some issues as a result of these things. You have to be aware of who you are in order to be aware of who your child is.
Yeah.
And I know that these two things are sort of at odds in that physically, it's best to have our children pretty young. Psychologically and mentally, it's probably better to have them later, right?
For some people, yeah, because first you maybe need to spend some time working on your own mental health. So,
exactly.
Which I mean, I would say read the book, first of all.
Yes,
and also, a lot of people benefit from going to counseling, right?
Yes.
If you're lucky enough to have access to that and are able to pay for it. So.
Absolutely. And may I say that the book is not just for parents or future parents. The book, it will be helpful to people who want to understand their own journey through their family of origin and what happened to them and who they became and why. It will help people understand themselves and what maybe they need to heal in order to be happier in their lives, whether they have children or not.
It's almost like we go through this developmental process where first we have our childhood, and then we have this period where we have to go back and understand it.
Yes.
And maybe someone can do that in one day, some miracle person, but some people, I remember Goldie Hawn said she went to therapy for 7 years to psychoanalysis. And she was quite young when she started, but maybe between the age of 20 and 27, she had that period where she went back. And I don't think she had I don't know very much about her childhood, but she went back and just broke it all down and came to know herself. And then after that, she had children. So perhaps that's part of the human condition, is that's what has to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Particularly when there's a period of time in the childhood where it was not going particularly well in terms of consciousness from the parents.
I feel like that's everyone, but maybe not. No, there is a range of experiences for sure. And some people have very different childhoods from others. So I want to ask you about your social media. Can you tell me what's your website? What social media do you have?
So my website is brendawhitemanpsychotherapy.ca. My people can feel free to email me. It's Brenda May Whiteman @gmail.com. I'm on Instagram and it's Brenda M. Whiteman. And so any of those ways I can be reached.
Are you currently taking new clients?
I am currently not taking new clients. I haven't for some time because my client roster has been full for a long time. I do make little exceptions here and there. If someone were to go on to I'm on psychologytoday.com. I have a profile there, which people could also look at. It does say that I'm not taking new clients, but I would encourage someone to reach out anyway.
You can put them on a wait list. You could put them on a wait list.
Yes, I could put them on a wait list.
And then when a spot comes up, you could see them. What area do you work in? What city are you in?
I'm in Peterborough.
Peterborough, but you could also see people virtually. So anywhere.
Absolutely.
Really, I think in North America.
I have clients around the world.
Around the world. Okay. And so the book is available from Friesen Press, which I will put down below in the description. It's also available from Amazon. Unmet Needs Never Go Away, a new paradigm for raising our children in the 21st century. So it's about meeting their needs appropriately developmentally. So
Exactly.
So I want to thank you for being my guest today. And I want to tell people to check out Brenda May Whiteman's website. And please follow and like and comment. Okay. And have a wonderful day. And my slogan is know your brain for a bountiful life, which is what we're talking about. Know your brain for a bountiful life. You're talking about knowing your background and knowing your psychology. I talk about biology, but all these things. Know your brain for a bountiful life.
Yes. Thank you, Faith. I appreciate you having me. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, we went 50s, like a lot of minutes. We're long, but that's okay.
Wow.
It's more information for people, and I'm having so much fun. So goodbye, everybody. Please subscribe. I don't want to sound like I'm begging, but I'm begging. So please subscribe.
Thank you, Faith.